Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. The 2021 session has closed and lawmakers have agreed to a budget for the next fiscal year. Bobby Harrison from MississippiToday.org joins us to help break down that spending. And Nathan Shrader is here, the Millsaps College political analyst, who will highlight some of the winners in this week's municipal primaries and some of the big races yet to come. That's all ahead on Mississippi Insight. But first, Bobby Harrison is one of the great correspondents that we work with at our reporting partners, MississippiToday.org. He's their senior Capitol reporter, and we always appreciate his analysis here on the show. Bobby, welcome back to Mississippi Insight.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
How big of a budget deal do lawmakers have to work with for the coming fiscal year?
Well, I mean, it's a large budget. I mean, I guess it's largest in state history, but you'd expect the budget to grow every year. But it's about $250 million more than the budget, or about 4% more than the budget that was passed in the previous session. For of course, the budget would go into effect for the new budget year, which begins on July 1st. And, the interesting thing to me, Byron, is that before when the pandemic hit last year, there was fears about what it was going to do to state revenues because of the shutdowns and whatnot that occurred around that outbreak. But, in reality, the pandemic has kind of spurred the Mississippi economy because there's been so many federal stimulus packages that revenues are strong, and it's reflected in the budget that was passed just a couple of weeks ago. As I said, it's about 4% more than the budget that was passed in the 2020 session. The cuts that were made in 2020 were restored, and they were able to provide additional money, about $100 million more for K through 12 education. Universities got a big bump, so did community colleges, and most every agency got more money than they got the previous year.
What were the big ticket budget items this year, and was there any significant change in appropriations to those?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the big ticket items would be the teacher pay raise. Teachers got there's an argument to be made it's not enough, but teachers did get a $1,000 a year pay raise. State employees, there's money put in the budget to provide them about a 3% pay raise. And then there's money put in the budget to provide a much more modest 1% pay raise for faculty at the community colleges and senior colleges, 8 public universities. And one thing that didn't get a lot of attention that I think was important, Byron, was that the health insurance costs for the state employees and teachers has gone up since the past year, and they were able to incorporate that cost into the budget without passing those costs on to state employees and teachers. Because they had done that, it would have been like teachers and state employees who were getting actually a budget salary cut instead of a salary increase. So that was kind of a big deal that did not get a lot of attention.
And there's a lot of talk about the Medicaid, particularly Medicaid expansion for rural hospitals and COVID-19 response. Where are we at when it comes to Medicaid expansion?
Well, as you probably know, this week we broke a story that there's an initiative filed to try to get on the ballot a proposal to have voters to approve Medicaid expansion. It's it came up again this session, but the legislative leadership, Governor Reeves, are opposed to it, even though there's data now to show that it actually would not cost the state money, but would make money for the state. But the state leaders continue to oppose Medicaid expansion, and so that did not go anywhere this session. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann says they're going to study the issue during the summer. So, and at the same time, I assume that there'll be a rollout of this initiative to try to gather the signatures, put on the ballot for I guess 2023 election year, a proposal to expand Medicaid expansion through the ballot box instead of through the legislative process.
And that ballot initiative, what do you think of the chances of that being successful?
Well, I think there's been similar initiatives in 8 or 9 other states, including conservative states like Missouri, and it's passed in all of those. As I understand it, it's passed in every state where it was on the ballot. And polls show that it's actually popular here. There's about 60% approval rating for Medicaid expansion, but Governor Tate Reeves calls it Obamacare expansion, and he's adamantly opposed to it. And Speaker Gunn said as late as a few days ago that he also continues to be opposed to it. Interesting thing, as part of the latest stimulus package, the American Rescue Act It will provide the state of Mississippi about $600 million over a 2-year period to as an incentive to expand Medicaid. Mississippi is one of only 12 states not to have Medicaid expansion at this point in time. So federal officials are looking for ways to try to provide incentives to Mississippi to expand Medicaid. And it is, not to get lost in the weeds, but, I think it's important to point out that in Mississippi, it's most single or married people who do not have children do not qualify for Medicaid. So if you're a working Mississippian working at I don't know, as a logger or in the convenience store, or you might have a job where you're working hard, but insurance does not pay, does not provide health insurance, and then you can't afford to pay for it. You just don't have any health insurance. And Medicaid expansion is designed to help those types of people. It'll be about 300,000 people estimated in Mississippi.
Let's talk about infrastructure and what the state did when it comes to infrastructure. Where do we stand, and what about the infrastructure that the state passed?
Oh, the Mississippi legislature this past session passed bond bills totaling about $300 million. And of course, bonds are sold to finance long-term construction projects. These included projects throughout the state of Mississippi. I think probably every county had a project in it. City of County of Madison here in our area, they got $5 million to do work on busy Bozeman Road out in near 55 in West Madison County. There was money for a golf course in Jackson, and but just projects throughout the state. Of course, the big thing that got left out was the money for to work on the infrastructure, the water system infrastructure in the city of Jackson that's caused so much problems. But there was no money for that. The state officials say that they're going to look at the federal money and do more research before they actually opt to provide any state money for that project.
You're right that there are at least two big issues that are likely to return in next year's session. What are they?
Well, as I spoke about one of them, we talked about Medicaid. Of course, the other big issue, Byron, is Speaker Philip Gunn's tax reform proposal to, phase out the income tax and increase the sales tax as part of that process. That would be a big change in the state's tax structure, the biggest in my lifetime, and I'm pretty old. So, that didn't pass in the 2021 session, but, he intends to try it again in 2022. Just like Medicaid expansion, Lieutenant Governor Hostman says he wants to study that during the off session, out of session time, and see if they can reach a compromise. But I firmly, while there's no support right now among the leadership for Medicaid expansion, there's a lot of support for tax reform, and especially eliminating the income tax. So I expect that to be a big issue going forward. But, of course, when you do that, you got to be careful. Mississippi has so many needs. Even though we gave the teachers a pay raise, we're still near the bottom in teacher pay. We're near the bottom or at the bottom in state employee pay. So we just have so many needs. So when you start talking about cutting taxes, you have to take that into account and try to make it revenue neutral or even maybe revenue positive. So we'll see how that works out this summer and going into the 2022 session.
We'll have more with Bobby Harrison when Mississippi Insight continues. The state expenditures are not the complete picture by far, but you've also done some writing with Jeff Pender on the impact of the American Rescue Plan in Mississippi. How big of a splash are we talking about, and where will most of that money go?
To quote former President Trump, it's huge. It's about $6 billion going to various governmental entities in Mississippi. About $1.8 million would go directly to the state for the legislature to appropriate. And it's important to note they didn't appropriate, well, they appropriated a tiny fraction of that money in the recently completed session, but most of that money it has not been appropriated to be available through until sometimes in 2024. So that could make a big impact going forward. City of Jackson's going to get about 45 million. Hinds County will get about the same. Every city, village, every municipality in the state is going to get a pot of money through this package, and as well as every county. The K through 12 schools will get $1.6 billion, excuse me, and community colleges and universities also will get a big chunk of money. So there's a lot of money that's going to be spread around, and it's going to have I think it's going to have a tremendous impact on the economy of the state. And that's part of the reason, Byron, that the legislature was able to increase the budget for the upcoming year that we talked about earlier, because that same package had money going out to individuals, $1,400, and with that $1,400, I think the average individual since the pandemic has occurred has got about $3,200 in direct stimulus payments from the federal government, and that money's gone to the state economy, resulting in revenue increases that leads to the increase in the budget that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and so when we look at the breakdown on infrastructure, the city of Jackson is going to get their share, and you're talking about the impact it's going to have across the state. You think it's going to be a long-term impact that we're going to see for many years?
Well, that's the hope. I mean, if the various political leaders in the city of Jackson, for the state of Mississippi, and through cities and counties throughout the state, and the local superintendents and county and city school board members use this money properly, it could have an impact for a long time, because I said the total going to Mississippi is about $6 billion. That is equivalent to the 1 year budget for the state. So it has the impact to do just tremendous good in Mississippi. I hope our leaders spend it wisely and take care to make sure that we have a long-term impact for these funds.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of questions about the Biden infrastructure proposal right now. What's going to happen with that? But are we likely to have a special session at all this summer?
Well, as I said, the money is available through 2024. So as it stands right now, I don't see any reason, unless there's just something that pops up, where there'd be a special session. Of course, this is the Mississippi legislature and politics, so no telling how things might change in the next few weeks. But I mean, they have plenty of time to spend that money, and so I expect it, unless things change, they won't start spending the bulk of it until the 2022 session.
Bobby Harrison, always a pleasure talking to you, and good to hear your analysis on what's happening at the state capitol.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Bobby, thank you very much. A quick programming note. The COVID-19 pandemic and economic recovery in Mississippi are the focus of our exclusive 12 News Town Hall, The Road to Normal. It features Governor Tate Reeves. Dr. Thomas Dobbs will also be here, along with MEMA Executive Director Stephen McCraney. It airs at 7 p.m. Tuesday, April 13th on WJTV and our broadcasting partners across the state. Remember, this isn't our town hall. It's not their town hall. It's your town hall. So please send us your questions from Governor Tate Reeves and to his top advisors by Tuesday. Use the hashtag #AskReeves on social media or email them directly to our producers at townhall@WJTV.com. We're back with Nathan Shrader on local elections after the break. Welcome back. Jackson's mayor coasted to a primary win against two Democratic challengers this week. But Chokwe Antarabamba faces challengers in the general election. But before he can pin down a new term of office, we got some analysis on a wide range of municipal elections this week from Nathan Shrader. Dr. Shrader chairs the Government and Politics Department at Millsaps College, and he's one of the authors of the quarterly State of the State survey by Millsaps College and Chisholm Strategies. Well, Dr. Shrader, we're going to go back over a lot of the ground that we covered with you last Tuesday. Mayor Lumumba won the Democratic primary with ease. Does he face a significant challenge in the general election on June 8th?
Well, no, he doesn't, Byron. There are numerous challenges, and I think that the greatest challenge that the mayor faces is turning out his voters to vote in an election in which many of them suspect he's going to win easily. And as you know, sometimes it's harder to get people to go back out and vote if they don't think that election is going to be close. The Republican candidate, there's just not a lot of votes were cast in the Republican race. There traditionally aren't many votes cast for a Republican candidate in the Jackson mayoral general election. However, there are some, to me, fascinating third-party candidates in this race. And I think that they may tend to pose a more significant challenge to the mayor than the Republican candidate. But with that said, I don't believe the mayor is going to have any difficulty being reelected in the June general election.
There were watching some key city council races as well, particularly in wards 4 and 5. Any surprises in those council races?
Well, I think the Ward 5 race is certainly interesting because you have Councilman Tillman, who has been a fixture in city council and in Jackson politics for a very long time, headed to a runoff. He's a very strong incumbent who has a long record, but he faced a very stiff challenge, I think, in the primary from Vernon Hartley. And Vernon Hartley's background with his various community organizations, 30-some years of military experience. He was the chair of the airport authority. He, I think, has the profile maybe and the moxie that other challengers to Councilman Tillman in the past have not brought to that election. I think that could be a very competitive one. And in the 4th Ward, this is the race to replace Councilman DeKeither Stamps, who of course was elected to the Mississippi legislature in a special election last year, and he's vacating the council seat. That race between Jackie Amos and Brian Grizzell. And again, the reason that race is one to watch is these are two very well-known individuals in Democratic Party politics. Jackie Amos is the state's Democratic National Committee woman. You know, she has a very high profile in the party, and Brian Grizzell is well known as a public school teacher, and some of his advocacy work for public education, and he ran recently for a judgeship. So his name is also kind of fresh on the minds of voters. I think the Ward 4 and the Ward 5 races are immensely important, and they could both be very, very close contests.
Another big race that we've been watching was the mayor's race down in Hattiesburg. Kayla White and Vanessa Jones are headed to a runoff on April 27th. The winner will face incumbent Mayor Toby Barker in June. Your thoughts on that race?
Well, I'm intrigued by that race because Toby Barker, as you know, the incumbent mayor, he's running as an independent. Toby Barker was a longtime Republican when he served in the state legislature. When he left the legislature to run for a municipal office as mayor of Hattiesburg 4 years ago, he did so as an independent. And typically, you know, we see you've got to be, for most elections, in order to have a shot, you've got to be a member of one of the political parties, especially in a big city or one of the bigger cities in the state. So here you're going to have the former Republican running as an independent, trying to build his coalition out so that it's a broader share of the electorate if he's running kind of down the middle as an independent. But we'll see once this Democratic runoff takes place exactly what the type of message is that's going to emerge as the counter argument to re-electing Toby Barker for another 4 years.
Of course, viewers can find the primary results on our website, WJTV.com. What are your thoughts about voter turnout?
Byron, I've been very disappointed in reviewing the numbers. I've been looking at the data both citywide, but then also ward by ward and precinct by precinct. And I'll tell you why I'm so frustrated with it. This was an election, one of the most important elections locally in a long time, because if you look at the magnitude of the challenges and the problems facing the city, from the crime rate to the water crisis to everything happening in the various neighborhoods and communities, there was a great need for people to be out expressing their views at the ballot box this time. By my last check, we're under 18% turnout. I tend to believe, and I emphasize this point with my students all the time as well, that the local elections, our municipal elections, and even our county elections, those should be the ones with the highest voter turnout. Because unlike races for the presidency and for Congress, for governor, even though those are critical elections, these races for city, town, and county offices in Mississippi are going to have an even greater bearing on your life, the voter, and what they do every day in their community. That's going to have a greater impact there. And to see that turnout number so low, it's very disappointing to me. And I hope we can do better in the general election with turnout, but I'm skeptical of that too right now.
Do you feel low voter turnout as an incentive to increase voter access, expand early voting, et cetera, or do you see this as election security concerns preclude these measures?
Well, look, I think to me, the data points very clearly to what could happen to make voter turnout more likely to raise the rates of voter participation, and this is based on what we see from the states that have the highest rate of voter turnout. If we were to shift completely to vote by mail, if you look at Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, these are the states that vote by mail already, and it's a common thing. And voter turnout is higher because two things: it's easier to get your vote in securely, but also you have more time to think about who you want to vote for, to deliberate about the candidates. When your ballot comes in the mail, you can take it out and actually look and see who's running and spend time researching them instead of having to make that decision oftentimes kind of on the fly on election day when you're standing in the ballot box or by the ballot box.
All right, Dr. Nathan Shrader, Millsaps College, thank you always for your time and for your analysis and giving us your insight.
All right, thank you so much for having me.
And we'll be right back. Big thanks to Mississippi Today's Bobby Harrison and Dr. Nathan Shrader from Millsaps College for joining us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. And don't forget our exclusive town hall with Governor Reeves Tuesday night at 7. I'm Byron Brown. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.